Righto, we're going to kick off our afternoon session, which will be a block for the next sort of couple of hours. So this afternoon we're going to be talking about internet and mobile phone reception. We've got Ian Ware from APA Sound. So just a bit of a spiel on what Ian's going to be talking about. Connectivity is critical to the adoption of new technology in your farming enterprise. This session will cover internet and connectivity options, including new technology to improve reception, as well as exploring methods of optimising your current connection to make the most of it. So I know where we live, just south of Area Park, our mobile service reception is very average, and it's one of the most frustrating things that we face when trying to implement these new technologies, and we don't actually have the phone reception or the data to be able to make it happen. So hopefully we get some tips and tricks from Ian this afternoon.
So that I've got the lay of the land, who's frustrated about internet? Everybody. Okay. What do you think? What you've got to do is treat your data side and your phone side, try to treat them as separate problems, right? Even though with 4G and 3G and the way they're doing the whole thing, it sort of dovetails together. But try to keep your data side and your phone side as two different problems. With farm technology, you've got to look at adapting across to whatever's happening at the time. Unfortunately, it only lasts 3-4 years and you've got to change the item out and go to something new. Well, that's the nature of the beast. But what you've got to do is adapt quickly. Look at the thing, how you're going to use it, what you're going to use it for, and get on board real quick. And a lot of technology, as you know, with the drones and weed spraying and tractors, and closed circuit TV is a big one. It saves you a lot of time on the farm. You implement that, you implement a farm-wide network over your farm and then turn around and put a whole stack of closed circuit TV cameras in, you can save yourself a huge amount of time. Same with animal tracking, water monitoring, and all types of water monitors or pH monitors or any type of monitor on the farm you want to look at. Connectivity is the limiting factor. So what you're trying to do is, one thing is getting good mobile phone reception and Wi-Fi or internet across your farm in key spots. So let's say you want to, your shearing shed, your machinery shed, the house, even the outhouse, a nice quiet spot to read your iPad in. So what you're trying to do is go after hotspots all over your farm, and you can set that up yourself. And once you've paid for that, it's done and dusted. And it's not technology that you're going to buy today and it's gone tomorrow. That technology is growing and getting better, but the principle is not changing. So you're putting up at your own system, is a 10 or 15 year investment. And the great thing about it is you're not on the patent alone. You can then get your neighbours to give you a hand to set it all up so you can share the costs. But we'll get through that. One of the biggest things is trying to get better speed. And there's a stack of ways of doing that. And the telcos do not want to tell you how to get better speed, because the slower the speed, the more money they can get out of you. It's as simple as that. So the quicker the connection, the less money you have to pay. So that thing you should think about in your head. Improving mobile phone coverage is your first thing to look at. So we're dealing with mobile phones here, 3G, 4G, right? Whether you hang it off and look at the internet on your phone or whatever, the 3G, 4G factor is getting better and better in Australia, and we will soon go to 5G, and 5G will be like the holy grail. But we have got Optus moving in. So Telstra are actually getting some decent opposition, and they're not mucking around. A Telstra tower, so much gear, an Optus tower, fibre to the base, and a lot of equipment, and a lot faster, and they're giving us a lot more bandwidth to play with. for a lot less dollars. Coverage maps are available, and in your area it's pretty good here. You've got pretty good right from here right down to Moora through to Wagga and that. There's a fair amount of towers. And the other great thing about it is you've got a fair amount of little hills that you can shove a transmitter on to get it all through your valley. And if you get your neighbours in place, one bloke might have a shearing shed sitting on a hill in a perfect spot. Another guy might be a pump unit with power in a perfect spot. So you've got to really start looking around your patch and see what you've got. So this is a Telstra coverage map, West Wyalong. And as you can see, the green is the 4G. But this is what you need to look at. So this is Telstra 4G X phone coverage map, right? This is without an antenna. This is just a straight phone sitting by itself. With an antenna on your truck, that's what happens. So I'll go back to the original one, get that one in your head. Put an antenna on the front of your vehicle. Now look at the not so much spots. So then, that's with, so that type of antenna. But out here, you should be realistically, you should have one that's about 6 foot long. And that is a very, very good antenna. This is only 4 to 6 dB, where your other big antennas are 8 or 9 dB. If you're out in the paddock and you're on long, flat going, you're far better off with the bigger antenna. But there is equipment you can hang between this and your cradle that is going to revolutionise the whole of this idea. So these things boost about 7 or 8 to 10 dB. dB is like its strength, right? So that there is with no dB and a straighter phone. That's with 7 dB to 10 dB, okay? Now if you put a set of boots or a linear amplifier on this that I'll show you in a minute, and they've got a legal one that'll fit an Optus and Telstra, so whichever carrier you're mainly with, which would be Telstra out here, you would go with a better system. Now this is Optus coverage. So it's pretty dismal through the area. It's getting there, but they're about to crank 4G all over this area. And it'll get a lot better in the next 2 or 3 years. It'll come up to par to Telstra. Now, as I said, for antennas, so the littlest antenna is the little whip. Now these ones here is that antenna, so that's the range. And that one there is the 6 foot antenna, so he's a lot longer, okay? And you can get quick releases, so you can have this one.
G'day guys, so being the techno nerd that I am, I couldn't go past getting myself one of these when they came out on the market. This is the Selfie Go, and these are a phone range booster, so they'll actually boost the signal where you are if there is any signal to be boosted. Now these are the only ones on the market at the moment that are legal and authorised by Telstra. Everything else at the moment is illegal. In fact, these can actually be turned off by Telstra if they choose to, if there's an emergency or anything like that. And as far as the unit goes itself, there's not a lot to it. There's a power jack there. Down the bottom here, you plug in the internal antenna in the car, so the phone signal will actually get boosted to this antenna. And then up the top here, you plug in your external antenna, which in my case is mounted on my bull bar. Now there's not a whole lot to these units. There's also a couple of LED lights there which show what it's doing at the current time, because you can have it on 3G, 4G or automatic, because it can only boost one band at a time. As far as mounting, there's not a lot to it. I'll show you how I've mounted mine. So personally for me, the best spot to mount the Selfie Go is behind the driver's seat on my cupboard here. This is just plywood, so just screws straight in. I've hardwired the power supply here into my electrical system, which is already here. And then I've got my internal antenna hooked up here and my external antenna hooked up there. So as far as install goes, there's not a whole lot to it. As far as the external antenna is concerned, I just decided to mount it on the bull bar because it's just the easiest spot for me to put it. And previously I used to have an external antenna for a cradle system, which also used to give me better range, but the Selfie Go is just next level stuff. So the Selfie Go has an app, thankfully. And as you can see, we're getting a boost of 9 at the moment. 9 is ideal. And you can also see what the input signal is at the moment, which is pretty much 1 bar. Now that kind of jumps between 8 and 9 boosts, but 9's pretty good. If you're getting 1, that's pretty shocking. So when you're installing the internal antenna, you want as much isolation as possible from the external antenna. So that means it's differences of height and also just pretty much as many metal objects and other things being in the way of the two antennas. So for me, I used the app when I was doing this, and you pretty much just move the internal antenna around until you get a boost of 9 pretty much. So for me, I ended up installing mine just there underneath the steering wheel, and that's proven to be a really good spot as well, so that when it's in my phone cradle, it's nice and close as well. Okay, so you got the Selfie Go installed and you're out in the bush. How well does it actually work? Well, at the moment I'm camped on the Blackwood River down south, and there is no service anywhere around this area without the Selfie Go. So let's have a look. At the moment we're on 9 boost, and as you can see we've got 4 bars, 5 bars, and we got internet as well. Just go into the SIM card status. So there you can see we're at kind of minus 75, hopping up and down a little bit, but anyway, we got good service. So let's turn it off and see what happens to the signal. And it just dropped like a stone, minus 113, which pretty much means no signal. So it'll probably take a little while for the bars at the top to update. So it's taken about a minute for the phone to realise that it's got no signal, but as you can see at the top now, it's got the indicator there, notification that there is no signal at all, which is confirmed by the signal strength, which is minus 113, which means there's squat all. So it's pretty awesome. If you just give me a minute, I'll boot it back up and we'll see what we get, eh? So I've booted the unit back up now, and we're sitting at about 4 or 5 bars, and we have internet. So as I said, there's no other service in this area normally. It's all the Selfie Go, otherwise this is a dead area. So this unit is absolutely awesome. Now you won't get service everywhere. The best way to check if there is a possibility you're going to have service is check the Telstra map. So the Telstra coverage map, I'll put a link for that in the description down below. And I'll actually show you now because I've got internet. So these aren't going to give you signal everywhere, unfortunately, but the Telstra coverage map is just a really easy indicator to see where you have signal and where you won't. In our current location right now, there is absolutely no signal for about 400 meters, yet I have 5 bars and I was able to load up this internet page with the Selfie Go. That's pretty epic. So it's not a miracle, but it'll give you signal in a lot more places than you'd normally have it. So yeah, definitely something to think about if you head out into the bush a lot and like your signal. There's a couple of reasons you might want it. Maybe you want to check the weather. Maybe you want to check Instagram if you're addicted. Or maybe you follow sports and have to know whether the Dockers lost or won. I don't know. Anyway, great thing to have. Catch you next video, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
So the go is, these units are damn good. So if you do a lot of travelling in and out of areas and you're pretty frustrated with the phone service, you're crackers if you don't get one. They are really good. Of all the things that we've seen come in, even the Selfie 1 units that fit in the house, how many people have got one of those? What do you think? Better than nothing, and it works. Be very careful with the 2 boxes. You've got to make sure that they're placed not too close to each other. And there's a little meter on the box to tell you there. So that's an important. And how many have external antennas on those boxes? You do? Great stuff. Yeah, an external antenna is definitely the way to go. If you're after 4G, you need 2 antennas. If you're after 3G, you only need 1. So with 4G and 4GX, I'll explain how that works. If I had after a 3G signal, it'd be out like that and cocked up a little bit, pointing at the tower. So that's 3G. But If you're after 4G, you've got to actually do them like that. One like that and one like that. Because what happens with 4G, the signal comes in screwed like that. So what happens with that is that one's like picking up and the one's transmitting. So with a MIMO signal, 2 antennas, and you can really boost it, especially 4G. On the back, on the Selfie box, you'll see 2 antenna plugs. You'll actually see 2. Yep. Depends on the new, it's all the new models have 2. You can actually get better antennas than these. So one of those on the roof will only give you 5 or 6 Ks. This will give you about 30 or 40, one of those. 70 or 80 with those, and then with a parabolic antenna, which is a big dish sort of one, it gets up to the 90. And there's another one, a panel antenna, special panel antenna, takes 2 cables, and it really, really goes well, 120 Ks away from the tower, and still brings it in. So there are ways to get it to your house and boost it around the house. You've got to imagine your house is covered in alfoil, council rules and regulations, that stops the signal from coming in. So the other thing with car antennas, car cradles, there's a couple of cradles around, and how many people have put in a new cradle and then the phone's dropped in the drink and then the cradle's no good? Heaps of us have had to replace the cradles heaps of times. Well, they make a nice cradle. Berry makes a good cradle for each type of phone. So you buy the cradle or the holder for the phone, it fits on the phone, and then you buy a holder that you put in each vehicle. And this cradle for the phone actually hooks in all the vehicles. So if you've got one of the trike, bike, tractor, header or whatever, you can just have the holder in there and then just move your cradle, hold it for the phone around. It's important that this one matches this one. So when you buy these things, they have to match this phone, because the antenna pickup is there, the antenna pickup on this 6 is here. So it lines it up and it gets good connectivity between the 2 antennas. Even though there's no physical, it's a lot better connection. So it's far better to have yourself a number of these. So your wife might have a 4 and you might have a 5 and son might have a 4S. Then you'd have all different cradles fitting into into the same holder in each truck. Makes sense, and it's pretty cost effective. Now the biggest reason you'd buy a Selfie Go is that there. On a phone cradle you get 7 or 8 dB. On a Selfie Go you get 70 dB. It is massive difference, so it will cover a lot of your dropout spots. And that 7 dB to 70 dB in our terminology is huge, absolutely massive gain in antenna boost. Now if you want to know what your phone signal's like, and let's say you've got to put up one of these Yagi antennas on the house, and you say, now where's the tower and which direction, you can actually, if you've got an Apple, you can punch this number in and it will give you the signal strength up in the top corner. Very handy little tool, and all the phones do it. If you don't have an Apple, you just Google field test mode and it'll tell you the number for your phone. Okay? You can't put that in speed dial, so you can put it in speed dial, but you have to punch it in manually each time because they won't let you multiply ring that number. So what that is doing, a field test on your phone to the tower. The tower comes back with signal strength, and then you see it in the top left-hand corner of your phone, the signal strength. Internet connections, the types of connection. NBN fibre, NBN wireless, ADSL2. Then how many people are on this one in the room, the satellite? One. 3G, 4G, how many's on that? Getting their internet. Stackiers. And has anybody set up their own relay for NBN yet? No.
How do you do that?
I'll show you exactly how to do that in a minute. So NBN fibre, is is an option, but it's not around here in any of these areas. It's lucky to be in Wagga, and they're having real issues with it because the old ADSL is running quicker than the NBN fibre. Fixed wireless. Now that's where a few years, so we've got a few years on that. Very good. So note that person that nodded his head. Put your hand up on fixed wireless in this room. 1, 2, Jeff. Okay, so you need to talk to your neighbours because every fixed wireless connection, so every box that's down inside there has 4 connections out of the base of it. And normally you're just using one, right? They send 100 megabits to your house and you only use 25 of it, right? Now the interesting thing about it is you have 3 other ports that you could share with 3 other farmers that are not so lucky with you. So if, we will hopefully in the future you'll be able to share 3 farms around you with 3 internet connections by personally putting their own beam from your house to their house. With the 4 connections on the bottom, you would have 4 individual separate NBN connections. So this house will pay $69 for his connection, and then you would pay on port B $69 for your connection. So that's the NBN rollout map. So there's your West Wyalong. So you've got a fair bit of spitted coverage all over the place. So if you're sitting here, you've got the option of that somebody sitting there, or somebody sitting anywhere in here that's got it. So if you've got a neighbour that you can see, or a hill that you can see, and see this one of these people, then that's the way to go. Now, when you do that system, you can share it, but it's advisable, the law says, I've got to keep it farm by farm. So farm A is owned $69 connection, farm B, farm C, right? But let's say you're on farm C, for instance, $69 connection. You then could have it at your shed, your shearing shed, the outhouse, the son-in-laws, the sister-in-laws, and your house. Let's talk about routers for a minute. Now, does everybody know what a router is? The signal comes in from the antenna up the top into an intermediate box and then runs into a router. So how many of you have still got the cheap router that the ISP sent you? Hands up. Yeah, the one Telstra gave you. Hands up, how many's still got that cheap router? Those routers are about $6.80 out of Taiwan and they're bloody useless. Yeah, they give them to you because they're cheap, right? If you're having Wi-Fi, how many people here know the difference between Wi-Fi and internet? Are you a bit confused, or do you want me to explain the difference between Wi-Fi and phone and internet? So the internet signal comes into the house, comes down and comes into this router. And you can hook this router up to a PC with a lead, and that's just plug it in. Or you can sit in the lounge room with your iPad and receive the signal off these antennas here. Now most of the antennas that they give you most of the routers they give you that are cheap are not worth peeing on, if you know what I mean. They're not that good. You're best off paying a few quid, $300-400, to buy a decent modem. That wireless modem will give you AC, it'll give you a number of transmissions. That one's on, see, that one there is the current one that you've got. That's how much signal it's putting out. It's hardly registering. 2 years old, or 3 years old, 2 years old, and these are the current ones in the last year or so. So how fast they go. So that's, this one's hardly registering, not even 1 or 2. This one's up into 3,000. It makes it faster, and it also gets around the house a lot quicker. So a lot of people have the bottleneck. The bottleneck's in this, not necessarily in NBN connection, 9 times out of 10 it's this thing. And this one puts out 4 different types of signals for all the new devices are using this. Old devices are using these. So you might have an old iPhone or an iPad using, say, that one there, G or N. You might have the latest iPhone or whatever, you might be using this one. So it shares the signal around the house. And as you can see, technology in the last 3 years has got a hell of a lot better. Now AC is cracking along at 3000 compared to, if you've got an old modem there, it's hardly doing any work. It's not even doing, it's terrible.
Can I swap the one that I've got like from Telstra?
Yep.
Put a different one, my own one in there?
Yeah, straight into JB Hi-Fi, pick it up off the bench and put it in.
Unplugging and plugging in, or you have to...
Now, some ISPs, right, you have to put in a password. Telstra and the big boys, you just plug it in. There's no password. Now, there is a password for your Wi-Fi, right? You know how you come into the house, I've got to put this bloody great long number in for the Wi-Fi. You can make that number up and put it in, you call it dog, cat, you know, Methuselah or anything. Make it simple. Or not even, if there's no one in 5Ks of you, don't even put a password in. So when you come in, you're straight onto it. So buying a new modem is a very prudent thing to do. And Nighthawk, Netcom Nighthawk modems, they've got a new one out that's got 4 antennas on the back of it instead of those 6 antennas. And they've actually got amplifiers in the antennas, and if you've got a big old stone building, how many people's got a big old stone building with thick walls or got an office out the back 50 metres? Well, these things overcome all that. Or the bedroom, or, you know, where you've got the office at one end of the house and the bedrooms and lounge rooms. So these types of units. And you can spread Wi-Fi around the house very, very easily.
Is there a restriction to do with signal?
Okay, let's talk about speed, okay? I hope you can handle this. I'm going to tell you the truth, right? Okay. What happens is since the government has asked for a lot more money off these ISPs, and what's happened is the whole system, a lot of the smaller ISPs, there's 122 of them, a lot of the small ones have oversold their product. So they haven't got much bandwidth to give out. Telstra's one of the big ones, it's got plenty of bandwidth, but they are not necessarily that brilliant. Optus is another provider, pretty good, but there's iiNet, WestNet, TPG, and Activate. All those are all in the big boys. So they've not oversold their product. And when you go to sign up with these guys, they'll be straight with you and say, do you want the extra $10 streaming package? And you say, yes. You must go with this streaming package, because what happens is with a lot of the ISPs, and if you look in their little fine print, right, you go with that ISP, and if you stream Netflix, the weather, you know, YouTube, anything, they slow you for 48 hours. So all of a sudden you say, geez, my internet's absolutely gone to pot. What's going on here? So actually one of your kids or somebody looked at Play School and they went, he's looked at Play School, right, throttle him. So they throttle your signal so that they can then have more signal to sell to the customers around you. Now there's 3 or 4 ways around this. You can go to a decent ISP who will be straight with you and say, if you pay that extra $10 a month, we will not throttle you. Another way is VPNs. It's a virtual private network. You can go to Chrome, for instance, and go into Chrome and go, I don't want my location notified, and tick that little box. And then search everything through Chrome, and that sets up a little VPN, so they don't know what you're looking at. So if you're looking at, you know, fox baiting or, you know, tractor maintenance or anything like that, they haven't got a clue, so they can't throttle you. So now there's 2 types of VPNs. A VPN you can put on your computer at home here, like I just said, tick in the box with Chrome, or you can actually pay about a $6.70, $6 to $7 service for a VPN provider. So all your signal goes off to the VPN and then goes out to the net and nobody knows what you're doing. One good thing about doing that is that nobody knows what your data is. You get a lot less viruses, a lot less muck through your emails, and how many of us have to troll through all that rubbish? So a VPN is a very good thing, and you can just Google it and see plenty of VPN providers. Find Australian one, Sydney, Melbourne, and one that's got a number of connections, and buy yourself a VPN service. Or at least tick the box in Chrome in the setup, and that includes in your phone too, right? So that you hide your identity. And then you don't get slowed on the internet. The other thing is, if you're not with, try to go, have a look at your plan and say, look, in 3 months I can get out of this thing, or I already can get out of this thing. Go to a decent internet provider. Because at Kirawatha we set up 4 farms on one connection. I had one on Harbour ISP, I had one on Activate, I had one on Infinity and one on Optus. And we were looking at, you know, the speeds all over the place. It's been shocking, absolutely shocking. And and I started drilling down and finding out what was going on. And it was directly related to the ISP that they're hooked up to. Because Pete with Optus was screaming, 44 megabits per second, right? But Matt down with Harbour ISP, 2. And I'm going, hang on, they're coming off the same tower, same gear. So then I do a trace network, find out where they all go, So Harbour, where'd it go? It went all the way out to Mudgee. Then it came back and then went up to Newcastle, then finally got to its service in Sydney. And I went, that's ridiculous. I did that with everybody to find out what's going on. Optus, because one of the big boys had a number of nodes around Australia, they just went to the quickest one, bang, straight into Young. It was just over the hill, and he was screaming. So I swapped a whole stack of people around onto Activate, and Activate, unlimited, $69. They even dropped their money from $79 to $69 and charged $10 to go back to $79 so I could get the streaming package, the same cost, unlimited, at 44 megabits per second. So satellite, still, you're all the only one in the room on satellite? Yeah. Your kids not education? Both at school. So local school, you're not teaching them. Distance ed, you're allowed to double your allowance. No, okay, done. The problem is with satellite, not a bad service, but if you're running 1 or 0 or any of these accounting packages or the bank, you can't run a cloud service and use these. The latency or the lag doesn't let you do that. So it's a bit of a drawback. Other than that, if you can't get it, it's still not too bad a service. Okay? 3G, 4G mobile. Has anybody got that modem? You have. So if you own that setup and you can't go to anywhere else, you should buy that cradle for that unit. Have you? Yep. And it has 2 connections on the back of it for 3G, 4G, and they work pretty darn well. Within 12 months, the battery will swell up. The unit will work without the battery. Take the battery out, okay, before you lose the whole thing, okay? I've had to replace hundreds of batteries. But if you're not using a mobile in your pocket and running around and going on holidays too much, just take the battery out and just put it back in the cradle. As I said with antennas, it's important. And now that was the box antenna I was telling you about. And that's the parabolic antenna, and this is one of these. And that one there is just a smaller version of that, which is really useless out here anyway. So 2 of those for 4G. One of those panels, and you can put 2 two cables into it and they work really well. But these parabolics, we use those a lot and we put 2 of them up and they really, really work. So 2 of those on that modem there, plugged in, really get it going, okay? There's a few models. Make sure you get the emergency service model. The ordinary model just does phone only. The emergency service model does phone and Wi-Fi, right? 2 components. So it boosts up your phone, but also you could have a laptop in the back, or the kids can, you know, when Dad gets home, I can get on the internet and I can hook up the laptop, right, to that unit. Now let's say you're short of $1, which we all are. There is no reason why you can't grab that unit out of the truck and bring it in and put it in the house, put an antenna on the house, put an antenna inside and have a power supply and hook it up, and then you've got Wi-Fi and phone in the house with the unit. They're that good you'll end up buying 2 of them, but don't be afraid to set up the Self-Fi Go in a house. Get yourself a decent CB supply, 10 amp or something like that. Get your polarity right, and plug it in and put it forward, one of these up on the roof, and then the little, and it comes with the Self-Fi little indoor antenna is just a little one about that big, and you just have it next to the, and you can buy them separately, so you can have all the antennas in place in the house and all the antennas for your truck. They're all regulated. When you sign up for any one of these devices, they want to know who you are and when you went to the toilet. But that's not a big deal. If you're outside of the metropolitans, you're right. If you want to buy one of these inside the metropolitan area or inside a pretty good coverage area, they'll examine you pretty closely. But, you know, if you live at Hay or Temora or Young, not a question. They actually build some panels that match up with this to extend your Wi-Fi and your phone range around. It's a little box about so big, and you just buy them as you go. So you can get that and then a number of these little panels and extend an area. Let's say, you know, the machinery shed's only 50 metres away. You could actually pick up, it's like when I do a cellular network for a farm, I might put a hotspot here and then I put another one over here at the sheep yards, and I try to make that one and this one encroach so they can talk to each other. So you make this one talk to each other. So you set up what we call a mesh network. Same as mesh or rim lock on a fence, where into the nodes actually sending the signal around and the mesh is actually connecting up to your radios. Did everybody follow me with that one?
So you lose any signal strength?
No. When we do, you know, interconnection stuff like that, we're running at about 450 megabits per second, like absolutely screaming. And Telstra's down, everybody else is down at 25 and 30. I mean, it's ludicrous, and we're running at 400 around the farm. So we might lose a little bit, maybe 6%, but 6% off 450 is bugger all compared to 6% off 25. So once we get the signal in and you've got it, boy, do we amplify it. Now, this is amazing from Optus. And this is just their basic package. 50 gig, 65, 70 gig, 80 a month. And the great thing about it, if you've got a friend that's got an Optus phone, please note what his signal's like. Because if he turns up the house and he's got a decent signal, well, you live in Harry, you've got it. Optus are upgrading their towers and putting these 4G LTE lights on their towers, and those are really making it kick butt. They are really working well. Some of the towers have been upgraded, and some of them not. Like, when we turn off to go to Colliamberley, what's that little town? That turn off down there just below Griffith? Darlington Point. Well, they've armed up Darlington Point with every single thing on it. Now, it's really rocking there. Nearly 65 megabits per second at the garage. I'm going, damn. But down at Colliamberley, they're back down on 3G. Oz Towers. This is a great little app. You can get it on your phone, you can look it up on the internet, and it tells you what every tower in Australia does. No lies, no nothing. It tells you exactly what you want to know. You have to have your phone enabled for location services. So you have to go in and say, yeah, tell everybody where I am. Click that on and you can get this. Okay, Oz Towers gives you a real good list of everything on the tower, and you can actually go in and see what towers, Optus, Telstra, NBN, the whole lot, and it tells you what's on that tower. And it's very, very handy when you're trying to find out, what's that tower over there? Is that an Optus one? And what's it transmitting? So when you have a look in there, it also shows you a little map of where the tower is located to make sure that we're looking at the right tower. So it is a very handy little app. Farm-wide connectivity. So this is what I do. I go all over Australia connecting up farmers. So with the farm Wi-Fi internet base and mobile phone base. So our main aim is to get Wi-Fi internet based all over the place and be able to boost that as well at the same time. This is a mesh network. It's not a great photo, but it shows you a little photo there about the antennas, sheep yards, cattle yards and that. So these units might have a main unit and then little sub-units around. So making your own cellular networks in all your important spots on your farm. It could be the house, it could be the machinery shed or wherever. So what we do is we'll bring in the signal from one spot and then we'll bounce it around the farm using a whole stack of number of small devices. If you wanted to extend Wi-Fi around the house, they're a great unit. They just plug into the power. You then just plug your modem in and then you can send the Wi-Fi signal around the house. Now, talking about Wi-Fi, they're the different types of Wi-Fi transmissions that come from your router. And it shows you how many feet. So some of these old ones only go far. Some of them go at 800. But this is just with a small antenna off the modem. If you use a decent antenna, you can extend this quite largely. Okay? And as you can see, the speed and the distance is directly related to each other. So the further away you go, the slower it gets. The closer you are, the faster it gets. And all these different ones are the different types of transmissions that come out of your modem. And that Nighthawk modem I said does every one of them. Your old $2 modem you got just does the bottom one. Fine-tune your internet. Picking the right ISP is very, very, very important. There is a number of factors why I like Activate. They're in Australia. Their call centre is in Melbourne and he speaks bloody English. Right? That's the first thing, right? Regardless of price or anything else. That's the first thing you look at. The second thing is, you look at the price, but what you want to do is look for the bang for the bucks what you get. Some companies, I won't say it, right? Right? They will give you a little bit, charge you a lot, and then charge you for every other little extra, where a lot of the other ISPs give them to you as the package. So be very careful on the ISP that you use. And as I said, the top big four, so TPG, Westnet, iiNet, Activate, which I like Activate because they don't use it over call centres overseas, and they'll go the extra mile to help you out. All of them are around the same dollars except the big T, right? All of them will give you unlimited except the big T, right? So what you've got to do is get unlimited. About $70 a month is the sweet spot. And at the minimum speed, 25.5. This 12.1, who's on 12.1 in the place? It's useless. You might as well not have internet. You must be on, your slowest speed you should be on should be 25.5. Very important. It fluctuates that much that if you're on 12, you'll go into 0 a lot of the week, right? Especially at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. If you're on 25, you might go down to 5 or 8 or 9, but at least you're not in 0. And this fluctuation is to do with the lack of bandwidth. So it's important that you are with one of the largest ISPs, not the little ones. So VPNs virtually hide your identity. So it's virtual private network. So you still use your ISP or whoever you're with, but what you're doing is putting a mediocre person right in the middle of it, and that person is hiding what you do off your PCs. If I do it PC by PC, I have to arm up that one, that one, that one, the kid's iPad out the back, all that. But if I do it with an ISP and pay $7 to somebody in Sydney, he arms the lot, everything that comes out of my stuff. So if you have 20 items in the house, it fixes up the lot. Okay? So it's a good thing. A little bit hard to get around technology-wise, setting it all up. You only have to set it up once and away you go, but it is worth doing. Now, this is called a PEP link balance router. So we talked about the routers with the wireless on it. This lets you put 3 or 4 connections in and make one nice big connection out. So if you're a good-sized business and you determine, like a bloke at Finley who runs a trucking service, and he has to get backloads for his trucks or he loses thousands of dollars a day. And in trucking and trying to get backloads, first in, best dressed. So he needs a good fast service. So what we do is we turn around and put 3 or 4 ISPs in there off different companies so that, you know, one might be up or down or whatever, and then he gets a decent size service out. So if one breaks down, he gets around there. He's got 3, it really gets going there. He's got 4, it gets even going there. So there are a lot of extra things around to get you up and boosted, especially across the farm. Okay, farm automation. So if you set up a farm-wide area network, setting up all these things on your farm then becomes ludicrously cheap and really easy to do. So opening fences, opening gates, cleaning troughs, putting lights on, switching the compressor on. You're racing home to do a bloody flat tyre. Geez, I've got to wait 40 minutes for that compressor to pump up. Well, you can switch it on the phone. This is a Sonoff. It's $30. If it's in Wi-Fi range, it'll switch any 12 volt or 240 item on and off for $30. And tell you, so easy, you can't even get the wiring, you can't get the wiring mucked up. It's 2 wires in, 2 wires out. And they are brilliant. And that item, you can hang off anything. Floodlights, gates, the house, any item that you have to switch on and off. Pumps or whatever. If you can manually switch it on or off, if you just lost your phone, you can come up and actually switch the little switch and it'll do the same thing. But you can have an app on your phone and then you can remotely control that anywhere in the world. What you do, how you do it...
Where's that running? Where's that picking up the...
Signal. I'll explain how this works. So let's say you decide you want to put internet into the house, or you've got fast internet to the house, or you've got broadband, or whatever you've got. So then what we do, on that farm, we would then spread the internet all over the farm by setting up all those little hotspots. Let's say the machinery shed, or your example, your other farm has internet on there, and we beam it out to that little pump station, and at that pump station, we set up a hotspot. So it'll be exactly the same as what we've got out there, where you've got a power. You can do it solar or ordinary power. You've got power. You would have about how many Ks is from the house? Piece of cake. 2 small dishes, about that big, pointing at each other, or you put a panel antenna in and it covers 120 degrees, and then you can put dish there, dish there, dish there. dish on the pump over there. You make it so you've got to see each other, right? But we've got, at Kirawatha, you know, we couldn't get to Matt's house because he was just behind the Dirty Great Hill. So we went out to a chook shed that had power, believe it or not. They said, oh, we'll bounce it out of the chook shed. I went out to the chook shed and there's bloody power at this chook shed. So we bounced it out to the chook shed, big chook shed, and then bounced it around, and no signal loss, over to Matt's and to his house so he could have internet. So once you have internet at the pump station, you set up the same thing, sets up a hotspot, right? That's Wi-Fi, what we call a Wi-Fi hotspot. You then can hang anything, cameras, Murphy gauges, all sorts of things off your pumps, a monitor for your fuel. I set up one where the guy said, I want to know when the thing switches on and off. Send me a message on the phone, SMS. Piece of cake. Did it within about 3 hours. And we did it not through Wi-Fi or NBN. We did it wirelessly. So we went around a pretty big set of trees through a river area. And he says, oh, it's playing up. He says, it's just told me the pump's switched off. And I'm going, well, if it tells you it's off. He says, oh, well, I need some sort of thing where I can believe it. And I said, what do you mean, believe it? You got the SMS. Well, I don't believe that. Put a video camera on it so I can see it. And I went, damn it. So we went up to the hill, put a relay in, bounced it down, put the camera on the gauges, sitting on the gauges on the pump, right? Right, so he could see the oil pressure, water pressure, the whole works. And he's going, I've found the problem. I says, what's that? It's not the pump at all. I says, it's one of my workers pinching diesel out of the tank behind the bloody pump. So I just put it generally on the thing, but you could see behind there in the tanks and that the guy was pulling up every afternoon and filling himself up with fuel. So that he found out the problem pretty quick. So the video paid off, you know. But as I said, once you've set your Wi-Fi up, especially machinery sheds, yards, or any key spot, pump stations are a big thing. Something you're visiting 2 or 3 times a week, or you want to keep an eye on it. You can switch things on and off with a simple thing like that, or you can put video cameras or lots and lots of gear there, and relatively cheap. Huh? A Sonoff, SONOFF. And as for putting solar on anything, it's a piece of cake, right? These days you just put a decent battery down the bottom and a solar panel, and they'll run video cameras forever. Well, that's the idea of it. See, what you do is finding a good hill that sees everything is a real goal. Because if you can get that hill and you can put 2 solar panels and a decent truck battery in a little chook shed or a little garden shed, putting a camera on or just receiving it, right, is, let's say, 80, 100 watts, right, in power draw. But if I'm putting a repeater in, so I'm picking the signal up from the house, bringing it up, and then I'm sending it out on 120 degrees in a couple of directions, then that goes into about 230, 240 watts. So if it's getting into that, you need a couple of batteries and a couple of panels. Yeah, well, a repeater, if you're having it on and off. You can have it so that it only wakes up at certain times, switches itself on and off and saves power. There's a number of ways around it. But that gear costs an amount, and the gear to do that, you might as well just bite the bullet and do the whole lot in one hit and have something decent there. Oh, UHF different. I can send a UHF straight through a whole stack of trees, over hills and around the corner. But you've got to remember UHF signals and those signals, the data is very minor. Are you on? Are you off? And not much more, right? Where we're talking about a fair amount of data to send video back and forwards. Cameras, if I put a camera and I'm looking at that doorway, I can count the sheep coming in and out of that doorway, either this way, that way, both ways, and I can count them all. I can also track how fast he's going and his movements, and if he stays in any particular spot for any length of time, it'll send me a message. Now, video surveillance can be very, very handy in the paddock. Very handy. Especially looking at troughs and watering points and machinery sheds, or anywhere you want to count animals in and out, or vermin in and out, which is good too. Now that's a Murphy switch. Now that works off CB or 900 meg or other than Wi-Fi. Now that unit there can report back out to your house and then eventually come back on your phone, and you can switch on and off, but it's low data, okay? So when you're using that, you're not sending a lot of data, only just it's on or if it's off, and I can do that. And there's plenty of these types of units around. This is web control, and these things you can just plug in and set up to automate yards and sheds and everything like that, and they're absolutely brilliant. That one there will open 30 gates. This one here is the same again. That one will do all sorts of lighting and everything. This one will do Wi-Fi and all sorts of video. There's heaps of different types of ones. This is the unit that you would love. It's power pack in their last 5 years, right? So no solar, it's got its own power. It monitors the tank level, or the flow, or the pressure. And these units can come with auxiliary switches on them to switch pumps on and off. So if this gets low, it'll automatically turn the pump on. It also will then notify you on your phone. Now these users are independent of NBN or anybody. So this type of technology has been around for a long time and is very, very good. And as I said, they've got their own monitoring systems, their own tank, their own switchboards on and off, all sorts of stuff. Have a look at them. They're pretty good mob. I think they're great. They're at the high end of the market. There are several ones around on the cheaper end. Even Gallagher make a cheap pump monitoring system, and it's wireless. So when you're adopting new technology, find somebody who knows a little bit about it and have a good look at it, at that technology with them. Find somebody who's already bought it and see what it's like. But one of the biggest things, has it got backup? Can I ring somebody when can I ring somebody when it goes wrong, right, to help me out to fix it? And that's one of the biggest things when I'm picking new technology, that's one of the biggest things. Same with that ISP with Activate. 10 pluses for the people sitting in Melbourne, This is my NBN extension, and that's what I was talking about, the chook shed. There he is there. So we came in on the NBN tower, come in on one of those, and then we set up that 120 degree sectors all over the farm, and then we put 12 houses hanging off it, and we relayed it in and out all over the place. I've even got a map here, I'll show you. So that gives you an idea of the NBN. And that shear and shed was sitting right on a hill just there, perfect storm. And then we covered all that area, and now we're about to cover all that area too by putting a relay over here. So that was, so that's, bouncing it into areas that they haven't got it. So that was the shear and shed. That's Pete's house way down through the gap there. That's the same, that's like rudimentarily shows you the shear and shed, and then going out to one set of houses there and another house here. And now this looks a mess. We've got 12 houses all the way around here off 4 NBN connections. And that's quite an old map, but that's your NBN coming in, and that's 202 by 120 degree sectors, and we've now got 4 up there. If do you know the McColls or Langfields or anybody out of Kirawatha?
What does something like that cost? I know you split it up over a few.
You split it up, but the main unit was about $9 grand, right? And each house ranged from $800 to $1,200. Each spot we armed up, piggery, shed, office, whatever. But then everybody then pitched in for the $9,000. I think they put in about $1,800 each for the main unit, right? And we put a rack and everything inside the shearing shed and everything. It's a pretty neat setup. And Pete built this stand so nobody was going to kill themselves servicing the antenna. It'll take about a couple of hours with a bit of walk mesh and that. So I think that, you know, the 12 houses at $1,200 each is, you know, roughly, you know, $12,000 or something like that, or $15,000, and then the unit was about $10,000, but then divide the whole lot up by 12 houses, you know, $2,500 each. It's not even worry, you know, to give them network, their own network, their own Wi-Fi, their own everything all over the place, 44 megabits per second they're running at, and some of them have got them ganged together, running at 80 megabits. The office is, you know, there's a couple of spots there where we really need really good internet because, you know, they pay the people by the hour there, so they want to, you know, but the kids at the play school, they, you know. So that gives you another idea where we couldn't get around the hill because there was a hill in the road. So into, you know, there to the bounce point around the mat, and there was a big hill here. So it gives you an idea. So there's many ways around, you know, once you set it up and you've got plenty of farmers within an area, you'll be surprised where you can and can't get. You'll have a saturation once you get it all up and rolling. And that was that relay, the case study on the relay. And that's just simply in and out and a power in the shed. 2 cables down to a little box and straight back up. And we put lightning protection here and downstairs in case it gets hit.
What was that?
Put lightning protection for storm and damage.
Yeah, what was that about?
What is it?
Yeah,
How do I do it?
yeah, what is the protection? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. You have to put an earth stake in the ground. It has to be about yay high, right? Knock it down so it's sticking out about so far, right? You then have to put a 100mm pipe around it, a poly pipe. You run 2 big earth cables from the rack and from the mast, right? And then when the Cat5 cable comes in, it comes into a little box and fits in, and then there's a big earth bar on the back of that light arrestor box. That light arrestor box goes down into the cable, down into the earth stake. 9 times out of 10 I try to put the, you know, there's a special sort of like salt stuff you put some water in there, but I just tell them every 3 or 4 weeks, can you piddle in the tube, and that keeps enough salt content to keep good conductivity with the earth and the earth bar. It's got to be a salty contact. If you're out of that, just go up with a little bit of water and some salt, you know. There's a couple of ways to skin that cat. But so we earth the crap out of everything because a lot of places, like, you know, a lot of range and places are right on top of hills and that, so lightning's pretty good. We've had that in 16 months and it's been hit 3 times. So it gives you an idea. And we put it...
Was that when you was piddling?
That's Langfields, yeah.
It hit the silo twice.
Yes, it did hit silo twice. And we're not talking about little bloody hits here. We're talking about melt half the friggin' silo. It was pretty bad, you know.
2 of the sheds, 2 of the
Yeah,
control.
2 big sheds and a control centre, and, you know, it was pretty bad. So went over and Pete insured it, and they pay Pete $20 a month to keep the insurance up, right? Share the insurance cost. And we said, right, let's get in there and, you know, clean it all up and add a few extras to make sure we get it a bit better and better every time we get a lightning strike. So we did, and we've been going along great. And it's working really well. And I've got lots of relays all over the place and lots of one-to-ones. But if you can get your farmers involved in a group area up a valley, right, mate, the costs become stupidly, you know, really cheap, and the benefits to have, you can have an omniaxial antenna on your car and pick up Wi-Fi in your truck driving around. There's all sorts of things you can do. But that gives you a line of sight. It shows you exactly point A to point B, so we know exactly if we're going to put an antenna in there and we want a line of sight. It even shows me the terrain, how big the antennas are, the height of the mast at either end. It drills even down to the type of equipment they recommend to use. There's no guesswork, tells you what frequencies and everything, and tells you what you've got to do to get the job done. And that gives you a terrain link analysis. You've got to remember when you send a signal to point A to point B, like if I send, oh, it's not that bloody good. If I send a signal from this torch to my hand, there's a Fresnel factor around it. So that bit area, we've also got to give it a little bit of a bubble, like a football bubble around it to make sure nothing encroaches. But your goal here is, connectivity all over your farm. Thank you, but I've got one small thing, a local case study. There's a young lady in the place here who's got frustrated. She's the only person that's got internet on the satellite. And she sent me a few drawings of where she is and what farm she needs to contact or connect, and I've been having a real good look at Ariel Park and Temora and everything like that. And that's you there. Here to here is within the footprint. And we looked at that one there's in the footprint. And that one there has a number of spots where we can actually bounce it from there to there. I thought you were actually this one. So a little bit of, sorry. Yeah. But it gives you an idea of, the coverage. That's the Telstra coverage area. But there's your kilometres between each of the places she needs to do. And depending on the coverage here and what we've got here, this here is not a hard ask. 12 kilometres on these things is not a hard ask or expensive. Just got to get some height. But that gives you an idea of the NBN coverage in these areas. So there are spots here that farm down here would be able to pick up on the NBN. You then grab that and send it in, or you might find it up here and send it in, or vice versa. There are a number of ways of skinning a cat to get signal all into that area, right? And I started doing the link, that's another one we'll drill down with the roads and the NBN coverage. As you can see, it's pretty scattery in there, so I think it wouldn't be very hard to pick up a house anywhere in these areas to get it into anywhere in these areas. So there's another one. Oh, talking about the Oz towers, it tells you everything that's on the tower. It tells you the signal and what you get off each tower, whether they're Telstra, Optus, Vodafone or NBN. So you can just go to each one of these and then have a look what they provide. And if you click on one of these, it actually shows you the map of where that tower located is on Google Earth. So yeah, there it is, shows you the tower where it's connected. Now that's that one over near Temora. That's where the tower, and you live just down here, or that house. I did a link analysis there, so that's where the tower is there. It's a 40-metre tower. It's an NBN tower. There's a heap of towers around here actually. And that's line sight. So when I've got green like that, it shows me that I've got a direct line of sight from there to there. And I go this end, I think. So this little bit here tells me, you can see the terrain, how much going. That's 10 metres that end and 40 metres that end. So this house here, not a problem for NBN. Not a problem. So that gives you, oh yeah, there you are, it's a bit of a look on the system. At the moment, the gods at NBN have decided they can only go 14 kilometres, right? So that's as far as they'll allow you out. But what you've got to do is you've got to find somebody on a hill that's got NBN of at least 14 kilometres towards you. You find somebody there, then we can get it from there to you, 14 kilometres, away we go. So you have a good look around and you say, Ian, I've found something. Here's their address, and I go on this, and I set it up, and I do the line, and I say, right. I says, go and talk to your neighbour there, I can get him, and he can go to him, and then across to you. There is a dozen ways of skinning this cat. So that's 30 kilometres, right? We're already getting NBN to pay for half of it, if you know what I mean. So it's an advantage of finding somebody on the top of a hill and to get it as far as close as you can get to you. Or,
You can only go 14k every.
no, I can go as much as I can see. They're only allowed to go 14k, God bless their little souls. You can get it at 30, 40 k's out, but the problem is they won't allow because it's you know, the signal drops off, oh, it's too hard, gee, I don't know, you know. The monitor mightn't be big enough at work, I don't know.
You could do it, but they wouldn't give you a plan.
Huh?
You could do it, but they wouldn't give you a plan.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what we do is we look at everybody within that 14 k's who's got NBN and go walk around and with a hat in the hand and say, buddy pal, you know, you've got 3 connections sitting here. I got 4 farmers out there that love you to death, you know, and it's happening all over the place. So everybody's, you know, hopping on board to give a hand, you know, and that way everybody wins. He gets a little bit of power for his NBN connection. We sort it out so he gets a bloody fast NBN connection from dismal to fast, and that sometimes is a big advantage for people in business.